Hello and welcome back to Just Follow Joy. My name's Ariana Joy. I'm a human design reader and teacher, and I am so stoked you're here with me. Today, I'm particularly stoked because I'm always happy you're here with me. But today, the reason I'm happy that you're here is because we're talking about a really cool concept in human design and also in astrology, because we're going to kind of combine the two. And that is the idea of ascendant gates in your human design body graph. So before we dive in, I just want to say that this is not traditional human design by any means. You will not find this in source material. You will not find people talking about this in general because it's not something that we take into account when we create a human design body graph and we're looking at your design. That being said, when I took a look at my design from this perspective, I found some things that really resonated and made a lot of sense and actually helped my astrological birth chart make more sense to me and helped my human design chart make more sense to me. So we're going to dive into that today and let you know how you can figure out what your ascendant gates are, what they mean for you, what they're going to tell you, and then what your actual specific gates mean, like how you can figure that out. So first off, what we have to talk about is the ascendant in your astrological natal chart. And if you are not familiar with astrology, if you are, you can just pass by this and go to the marker for the human design part. But if you are new to astrology, your ascendant, aka your rising sign, refers to the zodiac sign that was rising, get it, on the eastern horizon when you were born. So at your time of birth. So when you're looking at your Western astrological natal chart, you'll see that it's ruled by the zodiac sign that is on the cusp of your first house. And if you're new to astrology, it took me so long to figure out that the cusp is the first line that determines that house. Because I'm like, well, there are two lines. There's the ending cusp and the beginning cusp. Which one? So the cusp of a house is going to be the line that determines the beginning of that house. So for example, you'll see in the chart that's pictured here, Capricorn is on the cusp of my first house. It determines my first house because it's the first line. So that means that my rising sign or my ascendant sign is Capricorn. And a quick note, I use equal sign as my house system. So the exact degree of my rising sign, which is 12 degrees, is also what determines the cusp of my first house. If you are using a system like whole sign, your cusp is going to be at 0 degrees. That's just the way that house system works. But the thing is that you don't really have to worry about that because that doesn't change anything for our purposes here. You can use literally any house system for this. And by the way, when I say in your Western astrological natal chart, it's not that you don't have a rising sign in Eastern astrology. It's just that this is how it looks for Western chart. It's the circle. I do not even know how to look at that on an Eastern astrological chart, so we're not going into that. But basically, in astrology, your ascendant sign represents the first energy with which you entered the world. And it's sometimes, for that reason, referred to as the prow of your ship, the ship being you on this trajectory of your life's journey. That's a metaphor used by Alana Cavalier, who is an astrologer. So really, your ascendant guides you, it pulls you forward, and it adds this overall theme to the experience that you're going to have in this lifetime. And I actually, to use another metaphor, I really like to think of this as the lens through which you'll be living out the rest of your astrology chart, no matter what else is going on in your chart. It's going to be colored by the energy or the themes of your ascendant. So no matter what I do, no matter how I live out my life, I'm always going to be ruled by Capricorn, and thus its ruling planet Saturn. And so that's always going to color how I do things, what pulls me forward, and plays a little bit of a part of my motivation as well. And the cool thing about our ascendant sign is that it actually also tells us how we are most likely to appear to others. And the reason for this is that your ascendant sign rules your first house, like I said, and the first house is all about the self, personal image, and how you look and come across, among other things. But it's really this sense of self, right? The first house represents Aries in the natural wheel, which is all about me, I am the one. This is really cool to know too, if you don't really know a lot about astrology, because usually when we are trying to figure out what a person is like or guess their sign, right? What we're thinking we're guessing is their sun sign, but actually we're playing that off of how they appear to us. And that's their rising sign. So when you're trying to guess someone's sign, it's really more likely that you're trying to guess their ascendant. And that would be the thing that you would hit more on the head, because someone can have a certain sun sign, which definitely does play a part in their personal expression. There's no doubt about that. But upon first meeting someone, that's really going to be more dependent on their ascendant for the most part. So for example, I am a Libra sun and I'm a Capricorn rising. So I strongly identify with being a Libra and those Libran themes, of fairness, equality, a love of aesthetics and art and artistry, and also loving gossip and drama as long as I am not personally involved in it and I have nothing to lose, as long as I have no skin in the game. However, the thing is that most people have told me they really see that Capricornian side of me when they first encounter me. So they see things like diligence, being very to the point, sometimes a little hard driving, all business, mature, hard overall, and in an unfortunate ownership of a very strong RBF. Also explains why there are a lot of people who meet me and are actually pretty afraid of me, which is hilarious to me because I feel like I'm a squishmallow. So knowing that, what would be an ascendant gate or a rising gate in human design? So in astrology, when we're looking at the wheel of the zodiac, it's chopped up into 12 different sections, 12 different pieces, houses, and each of those are going to correlate to a different zodiac sign. Now, in human design, we have that wheel and we still have those 12 sections of the zodiac, but they're also overlaid with the 64 gates of the I Ching. So it's sort of like these signs are chopped up into gates, which are specific energetic themes that come from like universal human themes and that are kind of mapped out onto our chart. So basically what this means is that when you have a placement in your astrology chart, whether it is a planet, an asteroid, an astronomical, yes, or mathematical point, like your rising or your south or north node, things that aren't actually a planet, they're just a spot in space. In human design, that placement will have both the energy of the gate and the greater sign it falls into. And so some of these can be obvious to us because they are placements that we take into account when we look at a human design body graph. For example, like Saturn. Saturn is something that you would see in your astrological chart, and then also you would see it as a placement in your human design chart. But then there are some like the rising where we don't really talk about that in general because that's not a placement that we consider in traditional human design. But anyway, so when you are looking at your quote unquote ascendant gate, really what we are looking at is the specific degree range in which your ascendant falls into your ascendant sign overall, and then looking at the correlating human design gate. And if that sounds confusing, here is an example, and I'm going to show this visually in the video. I am a Capricorn ascendant, like I said, but because my ascendant is specifically at 12 degrees of Capricorn, my ascendant would be gate 38 in particular. So yeah, I'm a Capricorn rising, but I'm a gate 38 Capricorn rising. So let's say somebody else was a Capricorn rising, but their rising sign was in a degree that falls into gate 54. Well, yeah, we would still be Capricorn risings, but there would be this slight nuance or this difference in the way that we are Capricorn risings, like which theme actually makes us that. So then, of course, you're going to want to know how you can find your ascendant gates. So the owner of the website Health Manifested has very graciously created and made available a chart generator just for this. So it shows you your usual human design chart, and then it also includes your rising or ascendant gates. So all you have to do is plug in your info and then identify the ascendant gates. And your personality ascendant is going to be on the bottom right, and your design ascendant is going to be on the bottom left. Also, another thing that you can do, because each gate reliably falls into a certain degree range, is that you can just look up the specific degree at which your rising sign falls and then see which gate that correlates to. And that's totally cool. I wouldn't recommend that for beginners because I think there's a lot of room for error. Also, if you do this, it's not going to tell you what line, so what line of the hexagram, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, that gate is on. So for example, if I did this myself, I would know that I would have my personality ascendant in gate 38, but I wouldn't know that it is specifically on line 4. And to be honest, like knowing the gate already, I've said this many times. I don't know if I've said it on YouTube or on the podcast, but like knowing the gate itself is already going to give you so much information. Plenty of people do not know the specific line that their gate is on, and it gives them plenty. Like you don't need to know that, but if you wanted to, just know that you're going to have to use this chart generator. And I keep saying ascendant gates or rising gates. That's because I actually forgot to mention you actually have 2 ascendant gates. And this is because your human design chart is not actually one chart. It's actually a composite of 2 different charts. So it's a combination of a snapshot of the sky when you were born and also a snapshot of the sky 3 months before you were born. So your personality ascendant gate comes from your birth date and your birth time. Like any personality gate in human design, this is going to be more obvious to you, and you're more likely to identify with this or see it, at least see it more easily in your life and personal expression. Like your mind's gonna see that and be like, yeah, that's me. And then on the other hand, your design ascendant comes from your design date, i.e., 3 months before you were born. So, like any design gate, this is more likely to be unconscious to you. It's actually highly likely this is unconscious to you. And your body is drawn to expressing this, but your mind is unlikely to identify with it so much. Like it's kind of like your mind has blinders on. It just doesn't think that that's you. So both of these are good to know. If you're only going to know one of them, I would learn your personality ascendant gate, but I think that both of them can give you some really good insight. So what's the point of even looking into your ascendant gate? Like what would this tell you that your ascendant sign on its own wouldn't tell you, or that your human design on its own wouldn't tell you? And I hinted at this a little bit before, but basically it tells you two main things. So your ascendant gates will give you a more specific look at the rising sign in your astrological chart. So, yes, you are an Aries rising or a Cancer rising, but what specific theme of Aries or Cancer is most highlighted for you there? And one quick note, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I'm wearing something different because I'm editing this right now. And I wanted to come in with an extra little piece of info. You can learn more about the specific expression of a placement and the sign that it's in your astrological natal chart through astrology alone. There's more in astrology about that. You don't have to use human design for this, but I thought this was a really cool way to overlay the I Ching and the human design system of gates with astrology to understand both birth charts through the other system. I thought it was just really cool. The second thing is this is a side of your human design chart that's not included in your usual charts or reports. So it's just going to give you a little bit more of a specific look into that, and kind of show you a side that the traditional charts don't show you. And that's not to say that the OG charts don't give you plenty. They do. Like you could just never know what your ascendant gate is. And honestly, you could just never know what your gates were. And if you follow your strategy and authority, that's going to take you in the right direction. But for me, I saw certain parts here that I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And I couldn't find that in other parts of my chart. I have my ascendant gates in gate 38, that's my personality ascendant, and then gate 41, which is my design ascendant. And these energies really did make so much sense to me, but they weren't really reflected in other parts of my human design. Like maybe a little bit, but not to the extent of knowing that this gate was actually present in my energy, like this specific theme. So, gate 38, really, it's called the gate of the fighter. And these people are here to fight for purpose. They enter into struggle or battle or, putting their all behind something because it really gives them this sense of purpose in life, whether they realize it or not. And it does explain a lot about why I am someone who craves that deep sense of purpose and why I can really struggle with Capricornian depression when I don't feel like I have something that I can fight for. Also, gate 38 is in the root center, and the root center can carry a lot of depression when the root center pressure isn't used correctly. Also, it does explain a lot about why a big lesson in this lifetime for me is picking my battles and not just arguing with literally everyone. I can be seen as an incredibly argumentative person. Knowing that this is my ascendant, this is how other people see me, it makes so much more sense to me. Like, why? And then my design ascendant is in gate 41, which is the gate of contraction and really represents this pressure to follow our dreams and bring fantasies to life, turn fantasy into reality. So it's an Aquarian gate, and it's very beautiful, very creative, very fantasy driven, very much like future oriented of like, oh my God, think of how amazing things could be. Consider all these different ways we can bring this inner spark to life and make that something in the external world, like make something out of that. So as soon as I saw these as my ascendants, I really felt this deep resonance. And that may be the same for you too. And if that's the case, then you can get a lot out of this. Another thing to know too, because I have a feeling people might have a question about this. If you decide to, consider your ascendant gates something important for you, and then you were to map it out on your human design chart and suddenly it creates a channel and then your energy type changes or your definition changes, I would not count that as your real energy type. I would definitely recommend just going by your original energy type and definition on the whole. I mean, if you look at the chart generator I included, you'll see that your AC isn't even defined on the body graph, right? It's just two things that are listed on the left and right. So again, this is just something so you can be a little bit more aware of the energies in your chart. And I can't stop you from doing whatever. There are some people who use sidereal human design, which already creates like a completely different chart than you would see in traditional human design. So there are different approaches that you can take to this. But changing your energy type or authority or something like that, according to this article and what you've learned, is like not something I would personally tell you to do. Like I mentioned before, and really want to stress, this is not traditional human design. The first time I said that was for people who are new to human design. The second time I'm saying that is for people who get really, really upset when anyone deviates 1% or even 0.0001% away from source material or what Ra Uru, the founder of human design, said. So please know, for everyone listening or watching, this is simply a fun way of combining your traditional Western astrology chart and your traditional human design chart. And in my opinion, use it to get a more nuanced and helpful understanding of yourself. And if you are going to blow a fucking gasket over this, I'm going to tell you what my friend said to me the other day, which is, girl, it's Pride Month. Just have a vodka soda and chill the fuck out. And finally, if you're wondering how you can learn what your specific ascendant gates mean, or what any of the gates in your human design chart mean, or what all of the gates mean, along with the channels that go along with them, I've got you. You can get everyday explanations for any or all of the gates in your human design chart and beyond when you grab the mini guide to the 64 gates and 36 channels. This is one of the best sellers on my site. People really, really love this. It is a great way to start decoding your chart in a way that doesn't sound so mechanical and so difficult to understand, because a lot of traditional ways of explaining the human design gates, they're not wrong, and they can be really helpful once you know a little bit more about human design. But if you're looking at them from a beginner's perspective, it can be really tough. So this is here to really give you a down-to-earth understanding of the gates in your chart so you can quickly put this together and get the gist of what's going on in your chart or in someone else's. And if you want to learn how to read charts in a chart reading using the gates and channels, so you want to be able to make sense of them, you want the real in-depth explanations of each of the gates, and how to create a cohesive story based on that in a chart reading, then you're definitely going to want to grab the gates and channels deep dive course for readers. That is absolutely for you. So check those out if you're interested. I'm going to link those down below in the description box if you're watching on YouTube, be in the show notes if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or what have you. And with that said, that's it from me. Thanks so much for joining me. I loved talking about this. This is super fun. It's actually been something that's been on my mind for a while. So I'm glad I got to share it with you. You rock, and I will see you next time.